Good morning. Hello and welcome to the 26th Annual BGD Legislative Conference. My name is Holly Sullivan. I'm State Representative from Southwest Indiana and delighted to be with you today. I'm very happy that each of you have chosen to spend today and delighted to serve on the education panel that we just wrapped up earlier on this stage. I'm here to introduce someone who truly does not need an introduction for most of you. However, I'd like to take a moment to touch on some of the highlights and accomplishments that make our governor stand out amongst his peers. Governor Eric Holcomb has served in many roles, ranging from campaign manager helping to elect a Terre Haute mayor, to leading the team that re-elected our Governor Mitch Daniels with the most votes ever received in a statewide candidate in the state of Indiana. From there, he continued to serve the public of this great state through his role as the Chief of Staff of former U.S. Senator Dan Coates, and later as our Lieutenant Governor. Governor Holcomb's accomplishments are not, however, limited to politics. He is a veteran of the United States Navy, an author, a basketball enthusiast, a collector of presidential autographs, and most importantly to my fifth grader at home, he is the dad to Indiana's first dog, Henry Holcomb. As governor, Eric works every day to take Indiana to the next level. Among his many efforts and accomplishments thus far, he has been successful in working hand in hand with the General Assembly to pass a $1.2 billion roads stimulus package and his continued focus on ways to attack our state's drug epidemic in Indiana families. Additionally, Governor Holcomb has engaged in continuing his efforts among the work with the General Assembly, the Department of Education, and many higher education institutions and the Commission, as well as our new Secretary of Career Connections and Talent, and several other public and private entities to address Indiana's workforce needs, to fill our skills gap, and to tap into the skills and the potential of nearly 500,000 Hoosiers without a high school diploma, and meet the needs of our demands of nearly 1,000 unfilled jobs in our state through a renewed focus on our workforce development. For someone who is working on so many efforts to better our state, we are absolutely delighted that he is able to join us here today. Would you please help me in welcoming Indiana's 51st Governor, Eric Holcomb.
Thank you. Thank you, Holly. Thank you, thank you, thank you. Good morning, good morning, good morning. Well, it's hard to believe that it was just about a year ago, exactly, obviously, today, that I was here before this very same group. But I guess as they say, time flies when you're having fun. I hope you've noticed. We, my partner and I, Lieutenant Governor Suzanne Crouch, have been having a lot of fun. And as Holly mentioned, my dog has been having a lot of fun as well, and always seeking to get covered himself. What a treat it is to be back with you. And this I was thinking about this on our way in, that this conference really does kind of set the stage, or is kind of a kickoff for what's to come in the next session. And we come from the past session where many described it, not just my Lieutenant Governor and yours, as one of the most collaborative and substantive sessions in recent memory. And I think for good reason. We got a lot done in the 2017 legislative session, and it was a long session, but we got done early. And I never miss an opportunity when I'm with my cohorts, wherever we may be, to remind them we got done with our work a week early and on budget. And I've claimed that we're the only state in the nation that has done that, and have not been corrected or called out yet. So I'm going to continue to make that claim. We set, obviously, a high bar, and went into the session in a strong position, and we came out even stronger out of that first gate, and we're seeking to do just that once again in 2018. That's why we rolled our legislative agenda out earlier last month, to take full advantage of the time that we had to work with the legislative members and the leaders on both sides of the aisle, taking advantage of this time during the holidays leading right up to January 3rd. And so we didn't want to lose one nanosecond of time or momentum. And in short, we're rocking and rolling, and we don't have time to waste. When you think about not just where we're going, but where we are, just very briefly, we are in a very strong position. I was just in our nation's capital with some of my cohorts Monday and Tuesday, and we were comparing our situations. And it is not lost on any of the competition that we find ourselves in a state that has made a real habit out of honestly balancing our budgets. We still enjoy a AAA credit rating. We've maintained that. We have almost $2 billion, $1.8 billion in reserves, so we're able to weather any tough times that may come down the road. That's about over 11% of our annual operating budget. That's something that most states can't claim, but the hits just keep coming. There's more and much more good news. We're still, we're still recognized as the top state in the Midwest market to do business in, a top 5 state in the country. Number 1 in terms of cost of doing business, number 1 in terms of cost of living. One that I'm particularly pleased about is, as you may recall, just earlier this year in January, so I can take no credit for it. I was the new kid on the block, but U.S. News and World Report named Indiana as the number 1, the top state in the country in terms of our state government efficiency and effectiveness. And that really goes a long way to help provide certainty and predictability and continuity, things that our investors are seeking as they look to not just give attention, but to make investments. And all that was coming off the civil and collaborative session that I spoke about. In addition to that, we managed to double our On My Way pre-K program. We, as you know, I hope you've booked your ticket. We have our first ever nonstop direct international flight, Flight 500, May 24th. If you have not bought your ticket, please do before the Indianapolis 500, that you'll be coming in and leaving from the nation's top-ranked international airport. We've, as Holly mentioned, we now have a fully funded infrastructure program, state and local, by the way. Our state program will now, for the first time, I think, best link all of our state assets, roads and bridges, to the most local assets. We found a way, because of the leadership in the General Assembly, to increase county budgets, county infrastructure budgets, local budgets by about 40%, in addition to this record investment in our state assets. So when you think about that $7.5 billion that we'll be investing over the next 5 years in our state assets, connecting those right up to the factory's front door, this is something that provides folks the ability to do long-term planning and carry out their visions. Plus, obviously, the community crossing program, which was $150 million for the very localized, small projects, sometimes sidewalks in communities, population under 500, that have just been talked about for years and years and years, but never had the means to actually complete those projects. They're being completed right now. I mentioned $150 million. Next year, that fund is projected or predicted to be up to $190 million. So we'll continue to build out this state truly at the street level. On top of all that, I hope you saw we had a record year in terms of job commitments. We broke the 2012 record, which was 27,620. We blew by that in November. We cut it off in December 1st, actually. And just yesterday at the Indiana Economic Development Corporation board meeting, I announced that we had topped 30,158 jobs for this past 12 months. So ended the year in a very impressive situation. Those wages, those 30,158 jobs, those wages are an average 27% higher than our state average new job wages. So we are pointed in the right direction. It's about a $7 billion investment coming our way from these job commitments. And I can just tell you we're going to start January in a strong position. So yes, we had a good year in 2017, but like so many things in life, records are meant to be broken, and we have a really aspirational posture about us, and so we're seeking not just to break the good records, but to obviously, and maybe most importantly, break the bad records, or truly not just confront the challenges that we face, but to overcome them. And to do that, we check, as I mentioned, we check the economic portfolio box, we check the infrastructure box, but we have to be able to say with all certainty and credibility that we're checking the people box. And so we're going to remain laser focused as the next 12 months unfold on people, because if we truly do want to remain number one in so many of these important categories, it will come back to the individual, and it will come back to that person. If we're going to continue to say, as we learned earlier this year, that Fort Wayne was the number one city in America to raise a family, or if we're going to continue to be able to say that Fishers is the number one city. I know they're always elbowing with Carmel, but the number one city to live, or Zionsville, to name another close by, is going to be one of the safest cities in America. It's going to come down to Hoosiers themselves. And so we're going to be doing a lot of not just giving a lot of attention to this, but making some changes along the way so that we truly have a skilled up and ready workforce as we just celebrated on the 11th of December, our 201st year strong. Everywhere I go, this is what I hear. Heard it nonstop in our nation's capital with folks that attended the receptions that we were at, and that is, if I invest, and by the way, everyone else around the nation's hearing the very same thing, if I invest in Indiana, am I going to find the workforce that I need in order to not just survive, but thrive in business? And so we're addressing that. We want to make sure that the state of Indiana is doing all it can to address any of these gaps that occur. And we've come at this a couple different ways, but making sure folks have that training or that retraining, making sure that they're on the path. We put out in mid-August, August 14th, the nextleveljobs.org. A few of us barnstormed the state, talking about the options that Hoosiers had, not just individuals, but also businesses, small and large employers around the state of Indiana. Since we rolled that out, Teresa, I think we've had over 240,000 Hoosiers go to that website, nextleveljobs.org, nextleveljobs.org, nextleveljobs.org. We're trying to get people to not just go 5 or 6 times yourself, but get the word out, because it is working. We've had over 12,000 applicants processed through from that 240,000, those hits. Had over 324 businesses as of last week who have applied as well, and we've said to Hoosier employers, if you'll hire more Hoosiers and have them 6 months later, and you put them through your training program, we'll send you a stipend to make sure that we're doing all we can. So we are making some headway, absolutely, but there's so much more that we can do, and there's so much more that has to be done if we're going to expect a different result, and that's why we brought forward somewhat of a new approach, because we rightly spent the last 10, 12 years diversifying our economy here in the state of Indiana, and we need to make sure that our educational system truly matches that evolution and the evolving economy, this tech-driven economy that we find ourselves in. So we're going to ensure going forward that every Hoosier student receives a baseline education infused with STEM, intellectual curiosity, critical thinking, all of these attributes and traits that are going to be demanded, required in this new economy, so that Hoosiers truly do, when they're graduating from high school and receiving that diploma on stage, that is their ticket to success on their next stop on this journey, whether they're going on to a 2-year, I saw President Ellspermann in here earlier, whether they're going on to a 2-year degree or Vincennes University, or a 4-year degree, or into the military, whatever that next step is, we want them to be well on their way. Our new approach is seeking to turn this somewhat upside down in terms of how the resources are being put into the system, and we're going to move away from the regulatory and compliance top-down approach and more into capacity building at the very local level, the street level, making sure that regions are best equipped to deal with and attract the talent that they need and groom that talent throughout the whole process, again, from the bottom up, localized, community by community by community, and so that they have the freedom and the flexibility. That's not rhetorical, that's real, and the funding, which may very well be the big difference in this approach. I just last week participated in the Hour of Coding event at the State House, and just my eyes were wide open at seeing some of these youngsters just devouring computer science and all that it meant. This is the way of the future, and it's just so encouraging. By the way, I was tutored myself by a 5th grader, and I did save Princess Leia for the record at the end of the project. I have the certificate to prove it. We had a little Star Wars game that they produced, but it was a real treat, honestly, to just watch youngsters take complex problems and solve them very quickly. And it just reminded me, this is the exact skill set that's going to be essential if we're going to continue to skill up from the bottom up, and that starts very early. And so that was so encouraging to see. We're going to make sure that computer science courses are obviously offered throughout our school system, throughout the state of Indiana. We'll make sure the teachers have the training, like emphasis, and Indiana University, Lori McRobbie was also at this event, the Hour of Coding event at the State House. Emphasis later next year will be hosting training sessions for our teachers down on the Bloomington campus. So exciting stuff is truly coming as we embrace where computer science fits into our state's future. So with these pathways, the juniors and seniors will have a lit up path that they can stay on, and we're going to make sure that we're doing all that we can to keep them on that path. And we'll do that through various ways. We'll create a state office of apprenticeship. We have a federal representative here, but we'll create a state office of apprenticeship and work-based learning, and we'll launch programs in other agencies as well, like the Department of Corrections. We know that we currently are seeing this effect, and have for decades, this revolving door effect where our inmates are in and out and in and out, and we have 27,000 inmates in our penal system right now, and we're releasing 10, 12, 13, 14,000 a year, and we're taking in about the same amount. So how do we break that cycle? We have an exciting program called The Last Mile that we'll introduce, that is offered to inmates that if they stay out of trouble for a few years leading up to being accepted into this program of coding, they will then go through that before they're released, and now all of a sudden they have the skills to succeed, and not just the skills but the hope for a better life, and many of which have just never experienced that before. These are the very individuals that were living in a box, and now they're thinking outside of this box and able to afford a new car or a new home. Something that's very interesting to me is we're dealing, this is a program that was launched out in California at San Quentin. It's now in 8 prisons in just California. We'll be the first state outside of California to introduce this. But it's very interesting. Chris, the gentleman that started it, said that when they're skilled up and when they're back out, they may move back to where they came from. And I had always thought, well, this is, you know, when you're surrounded by bad influence or by a certain peer group, then you can easily go back. He said just the opposite is happening, that when these folks are back out and working and making 6 figures, that they are, all of a sudden, they become an instant example of what can happen. Transformational. And it's having an effect where folks are not just trying to be the next rock star or athlete. They're thinking they can be the next Mark Zuckerberg, and they're seeing an example of someone who used to be in prison and who is now making 6 figures, and it's a real inspiration. And so we're going to seek to really lean in on this front and see if we can break that cycle. I mentioned 27,000. That may sound like a lot, that may not sound like a lot, but that's about a $758 million hit to our budget, and I think if we can be spending that money, skilling up folks, it's money much better spent. And so we'll seek to not just skill up our folks, but we'll also not lose sight of one of our real advantages, and that is the attractiveness of our economy. And so we'll continue to lean in on that space as well. We'll take the very best of the Regional Cities Initiative and the stellar programs and ask folks around the state of Indiana to not just think, but to act regionally. We'll be very methodical about investments that we make around the state of Indiana. They have been, communities that have been doing this already are just proof positive how transformational this program and this approach can be. We're going to do, I'm going to take it upon myself to do a better job of sharing Indiana's success story. We have so much to obviously be proud of after 201 years. As a state, we have a reputation as Hoosiers of being humble and modest, and those are good attributes, I guess. But I'm done being modest when it comes to the state of Indiana, and I'm going to set that aside and take it upon myself to share it and tell it and spread it, not just around the state of Indiana, obviously, but around the country and continue to around the world. It is taking root, and people are looking, people are investing, and we need to do more of it. I saw Ed Soliday, the king of the roads, somewhere. We're going to continue to lean into the future in regards to authorizing autonomous vehicles. We want to, the Indy 500, that track started as a research and development area, hotbed, and we want to make sure we take advantage of this going into the future and live up to not just our reputation, but to our mission of truly being the crossroads of America, which means we'll continue to make further investments, not just in roads and bridges when we talk about our infrastructure, but we'll continue to look at potentially developing a 4th water port. Again, just over the last Monday, Tuesday, talking about a 4th water port to folks out in Washington, D.C., their eyebrow kind of raises and they think, you have ports in Indiana. They are thriving. And so the 2 on the Ohio River and the 1 on Lake Michigan, we may add another down in southeast Indiana. We're talking about more access to broadband, internet, so that you can have the speed that's required in order to conduct your affairs. We're talking about in the region investments in not just double tracking the South Shore line, but also expanding the Westlake corridor, more direct flights, both domestic and international regional airport investments, as well as here in our capital city. And as I said, as we're focused on our people, we're going to continue to not look away when it comes to addressing the drug epidemic that is surrounding all of us. This is what starts out as I see it, as a personal crisis, but it quickly turns into a family crisis, and that quickly turns into a community crisis. It's now truly a business crisis. It affects everyone from the high school dropout to the PhD, to urban, suburban, rural. We're making progress, but we still have a long row to hoe here, and so we'll continue to take a balanced approach on this. Prevention and treatment and enforcement. We'll look to stiffen penalties by establishing a felony charge for drug-induced homicides. We're going to require all physicians in the state of Indiana to use Inspect before that first prescription. Our FSSA agency will work to increase the number of opioid treatment locations and better linking folks seeking help to a more immediate solution, and start to create a real system of care so that it's obvious to folks who are currently in the dark, who are reaching out, trying to find the light. And we'll look for ways to improve the reporting of drug overdose deaths. If you can't measure it, you can't manage it. And so we're going to have to find ways to make sure that the data that we're accumulating is good and is fresh, and that we're not that we're allocating our resources appropriately and in the wisest manner possible. And finally, our fifth pillar, so to speak, it will be to continue to deliver a great state government service. We're ranked #1. Everyone's nipping at our heels. Everyone's looking at our blueprint, saying, "How did you qualify for that pole position?" And they're trying to copy everything we're doing. So we have to raise the bar ourselves internally. Right after that ranking came out, we huddled up in the Government Center South, and our agency heads and members of their agency got together, and we said, okay, what are your ideas that have been bottled up, that have been rattling around up in the kitchen here, and you've just never been heard? We want to hear what your ideas are. And it was fascinating. We had hundreds of good ideas come out of that session that we've been working on ever since. And so we're not just competing against 49 other states and territories. We have to compete against ourselves. This is somewhat of an intramural exercise to make sure that we're always leaning in and always saying good enough is not good enough in terms of the services that we're providing. So we'll look for ways to streamline your interaction or interfacing with state government with one entry point portal when you're conducting business online with the state of Indiana. You'll hear a little bit more about this today, but we'll implement a new parent leave policy. This is going to be centered on doing all that we can to recruit and retain the best state employee workforce that any state can boast. And the list will go on and on and on, and maybe the most important is come hell or high water, we're going to have a state insect by the end of this session. I'm all in, and I've got the bug. We're going to get this done. So as you can see, when we're talking about a short session out in mid-March, we've got a lot to do. This is a to-do list, and we're going to be focused on it 24 hours a day. And I fully realize that all of these challenges are going to require many hands. It's not going to make the work easier, but it will make it lighter. And I just want you to know how much I appreciate, how much our team appreciates all the help that we're not just being offered, but that is underway right now. Because I know that any and all of these challenges, we're not in a unique situation. Other states are facing these very same issues that I've just articulated and shared, but all of these challenges, any and all of them, it is just far outweighed by our ability here in the state of Indiana and the real opportunity that we have to solve them. So until we meet again in the State House, I want to wish you all happy holidays and a lot of love and laughter and all the carpool karaoke you can take. Thank you all very much. Thank you. Thank you.